Welcome back to the PreVetted Podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Today, I am joined by Adrian Ferrero. He's co-founder and CEO of Biome Makers, where for over a decade he has been using advanced genomics to read the microbes in our soil to help transform global agriculture. Adrian is a four-time founder, a Mission Soil Board expert for the European Commission, and was named one of Spain's best young entrepreneurs. Adrian, welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure to be here today, Federico. Thanks for inviting me.
I am honored to have you here today. So, for people meeting you for the first time, can you describe a little more what you do?
What we do, let me start a little bit giving a background of myself. I'm an economist by training, a bachelor in economic science and also master in environmental technologies. But I consider myself an innovator. I really love to be looking for new technologies and ways to apply this technology to solve problems that are current, are important, and have a great impact also in our society. Some years ago, I joined my childhood friend, Alberto Acedo. He's PhD in molecular biology and built one of the most interesting companies that I founded so far, it was the first genetic diagnostic center specialized in a technology called DNA sequencing, which is a way to digitalize the DNA and generate data from samples, biological samples, in order to help people to understand better hereditary diseases. We sold that company and invested all the money in Biome Makers because we believe that we could apply the personalized medicine concept into agriculture. And this is actually what we're doing at Biome Makers. We realized that agriculture farmers were lacking on bioindicators to really connect to nature in order to make decisions. And we're ready to really bring one of the most interesting and reliable bioindicator in nature, which are communities of microbes. In this case, the microbes populating the soil, the bacteria and the fungal species, being able to generate full profile of these species from soil samples using DNA sequencing, and from there building a digital system that was able to really understand how the soil is working. This is closely connected to soil health. Today, we work with agronomists, retailers, input manufacturers, farmers, all the stakeholders in the agricultural sector in order to manage the field in a more smarter way and respectful to our soils.
Very interesting. What would be the benefits compared to? I learned about hydroponics that basically erases the out of the equation all the local, microbes and fungus, right? Because it's basically inert soil, right? What would be the benefit of?
Well, in essence, soil is a scarce source or resource, and we've been not very friendly to our soil life. So we've been depleting actually the life of the soils according to the farming practices, or at least not benefiting the sustainability of those natural functions. In Europe, people say ecological services delivered by, in this case, the soil. So in hydroponics, you are growing plants without soil, which is very interesting concept, especially in cities. No, there are some cities like New York who
Right.
are growing plants in warehouses, which is great. But one of the problems they are facing, for instance, is the resistance of the plants to certain diseases, because microbes might be a threat, but at the same time are protecting us. And we have plenty of microbes in our skin. Without them, we'll not be able to live or even to be healthy also, because we'll be suffering a lot of diseases. But at the same time, this is one of the aspects, the disease side, but also when it comes to the quality of the crops, labors originated because the plant is stressed. So there are different factors where microbes are going to be essential in order to impact the food that we grow in, or the plants grow and we harvest.
Right. Very interesting. Yeah, I've seen similar things happening to kids in the developed world where they're not used to, play in the dirt, get
Interact.
exposed basically. Right, right. Just grab dirty things and get dirty, right? And play with the soil, with the dog, with whatever. And when they grow up, they lack that development of resistance, and then they get much sicker and more often and than other kids, right? That are exposed to that, right? So I understand what you're saying. And eventually there is on the plants there is a monetary benefit, because on the short term you can get some better yield, but then that yield is going to be less resistant, so eventually that benefit is going to wear down, right? Or you're going to have more liability, right?
Yeah, actually, it's very interesting that you mentioned that specific example when we were developing the technology. By the way, today Biomakers makes 11 years working, so it's a huge milestone for us today, 26th of May. It's when 11 years ago when we started this journey, and it's been very interesting because there has been different steps, and one of them was understanding how the technology could bring value in this case. And
Right.
we were working with a company developing fresh fruit solutions, like to support how to keep potatoes fresh for longer term, fruit, and so on. And one of the things they wanted to explore is the difference between organic farm apples and conventional farm apples. So actually, food is in essence how we inoculate microbes into our body, or one of the sources of inoculation. Okay, so it was when we studied in this case the microbiome, not of the soil, but of the fruit itself of the apples. We saw that, and the conclusion seems to be very reasonable. So organic farm apples have more microbes in the skin of the fruit, so more diversity, biodiversity compared to a conventional farm apples. While a conventional farm apples have lower number of species and the proportions and so on, but also the threats, the potential threats that you were having were also lower. So the question at the end was, what is better, right? It's like the question everybody will place, but actually that's the wrong question. The question is, if you have to buy apples for an hospital where you have people who is sick with probably the immune system little bit depressed, so you don't want to buy organic farm apples. You want to be as safe as possible. So conventional farm apples are the greatest. But if you have to
Right.
buy apples for a kindergarten where kids needs to develop their immune system, you want to sponsor them. So in that case, organic farm apples, which are safe, but there are certain interactions that encourage and activate the immune system. That's the kind of things
Right.
we
Right.
learn by interacting with microbes and learning about them.
Yeah, I think that what you're describing is controlled exposure. The, uh, the risk versus the payoffs, right? For a healthy kid, the payoffs are immense, but for somebody that is on ICU or requires special that they have their defenses low, then yeah, you want to have the payoff is not worth the risk, right? And that's where having more uh, manufactured apples would make sense, right?
Yeah, and something
Yes.
we learn as well is that in nature, and that works also for humans, certain level of stress is good. So helps us to
Right.
be more, let's say, elastic, no? And that applies also on the way we farm. So if we treat plants as pure isolated in a bubble, so the food we're going to be eating probably is not as good as the food from a plant. And this is something that we have coded in our minds. It's not something we have. And there are plenty of data and literature available to reinforce this message. But everybody understands that it's something that has a little bit more biological interaction initially can be considered healthier, right? And that's the reason because regenerative agriculture mindset is pushing really hard and having traction in our agriculture community.
Right. Right. Very interesting. And what first pulled you towards soil and agriculture as a problem you wanted to spend, the rest of the 11 years of your life?
That's a great question because we are both, Alberto and me, are originally from an area in Spain, in the northwest of Spain. It's an agricultural region where corn, potatoes, sugar beets, and wheat are the main crops. There are others, beans and others, but those are like the four main crops that we have. And from time to time, we were not able to drink the tap water because the lot of chemicals in the groundwater. So instead of blaming farmers, what we realize what is happening that farmers are not using the inputs in a way that everything goes to the plant and they are not polluting, in this case, the groundwater. So then we realized that they were not, they didn't have information about biological processes. And when it comes, nitrogen is one of the main issues in farming. So the nutrient use efficiency is really low, really poor. That's the reason because every pound that you throw into the field, very little goes into the plant, and the rest, well, part stays in the soil, other part goes to the atmosphere in the form of oxynitrate, and other part of the nitrogen goes down to the groundwater and pollute it. So that was the origin of the idea that can we help to solve these problems, support agriculture by connecting to nature, in this case, to the soil, to optimize the input strategy, which is going to save money at the same time, because if you are able to increase the nutrient use efficiency through activating the soil biology in the field, then you need to use probably less fertilizer.
Right,
And there is this positive side effect, or even
right,
polluting the one of the most pollutant greenhouse gas is the oxynitrate. We talk about carbon dioxide, but this other gas is 300 times more resilient in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide. So this is one of the main issues that the agriculture, the way we are farming right now, is generating. And actually, during crop season or the harvest, not harvest. So when you are preparing the land and putting the fertilizer and so on, you see what is happening in the atmosphere in the Midwest. It's terrifying. So that's the reason because regulators are restricting the use of certain inputs because overuse of these additives might be not beneficial for the operation and not very obviously for the society.
right, right. Very interesting. Yeah, I still remember. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when greenhouse,
The whole
was, yeah. I mean, the when I think it was like 90+% of countries agreed to stop using to start protecting the ozone layer, and they basically reduced significantly the amount of I don't remember which gas was, but I think now we see the effects that the ozone layer is almost fully restored because of that decision. So what I'm trying to say with this is that a lot of this is lack of awareness, and then also lack of political decision of the countries to say, okay, we're going to move forward with lowering our emission, right?
And I believe that everybody is committed to this goal. I mean, or at least aware that we have to be careful as much as possible.
Right.
And depending, obviously, of the economics, we cannot ask a developed country to be very strict on certain emissions because they need that activity to survive. While in other economies, probably we have more room for improvement, which at the end of the day, that improvement is profits. Or in this case, could be the farmers if we talk about agriculture. But if we go away from agriculture to secondary sector, then other industries, factories have a huge potential win.
Right. Right. Yes, I agree. So, who are the clients of Biome Makers, and what products or services are you providing?
So here it's very interesting that when we start developing the technologies, we realized that there were no references at all that we can utilize. When we were doing human DNA, you have the human genome, which is like the reference. You put
Right.
your patient, your sample DNA against the reference, and you start seeing differences, which are the mutations, and then you classify the result by informatic processes to really valorize the outcome, the conclusion of the analysis. In the case of the soil, it's a multidimensional because we're not looking at a single chain of DNA. We're looking at different species that populates the soil. But again, there were no references, so we started building those references and growing the database. Today, we can proudly say that we have the largest database of soil microbiome profiles in terms of geography, crop diversities, and number of references at the end of the day, which is great, by the way. So knowing that, who are benefiting from that? Well, first, how can we keep growing this database, these references, learn? Now we can probably also say train our intelligence based on what we see in the soil to start moving ahead with what is called now, I mean, I really like the trending topics or terms, no? The digital twin of the soil at planetary level, no understanding the biological dynamics of the soil, the life of the soil, and being able to predict how the soil is going to evolve depending how we manage the soil. So for that, what we're doing, we deliver certain, or we develop certain solutions to serve certain segments within agriculture, and those are our current plans. But the final goal actually is to keep moving ahead on understanding and learning from soil dynamics in order to, well, recommend better to those stakeholders to preserve the soil fertility or the natural fertility of the soil, because the soil is like an engine. So we're going specific to the question. We're working with agronomists and technical departments of large farming operations because they are making decisions on the inputs and the programs that they are going to be implementing into a field or a specific crop. So we deliver functional profiles of areas of crops, and also we identify the needs and also place specific recommendations on, in this case, biological practices or inputs that might be helping to boost the soil productivity. At the same time, we're working with input manufacturers, so the companies developing the different solutions for agriculture in order to understand the specific effect that their applications are having into the soil health. It's so interesting to realize that that information was not available before, and farmers were using certain solutions, commercial solutions, without even knowing what was going to happen. In many cases, those solutions were not having a real impact. It was a mix of different substances, and from there, well, there might be some effect or not, but it's not. Can you imagine taking a pill or a nutritional supplement or something, a probiotic, and you don't know what is going to happen into your body because there is no. So that happened. We're
Right.
working with them. And the third segment we're tackling or targeting is the CPGs, the food operators, because they feel the pressure from consumers to be responsible and deliver the best food possible. There is the scope 3 emissions, so understanding how your providers are operating and trying to minimize as much as possible in this case, the carbon emission or the carbon footprint in the field. Imagine a coffee supplier, no? So we work with them to support their providers to improve the carbon footprint. And those are the three segments we have right now.
Right. Very interesting. So you're helping farmers or blindly applying products without knowing the effectiveness by providing a more thorough report on what they have on their soil, right? On the
Bioactivity, functional level.
bioactivity. Yes. And also now you can. It's interesting that you're talking about that you don't have any standards, because when you are so cutting edge, there's no standards, right? that's kind of a good way to realize that you are on the cutting edge of technology, right? When you're the first one that has to set up the standards, right?
Yeah, and we do a lot of work with academia and institutions and a lot of validation as well, just because the acceptance of that, no? And also mark the line on things that are well done compared to others that might not be as reliable, let's say. We have
Right.
over probably 40 scientific publications where our technology has been used, peer reviewed by other researchers. We have our own publications also, just to exposure and share what we do with the whole community. The work that I'm doing at the as an expert of the emission soil is also trying to guide what would be the best way to coordinate all the efforts, because this is not a single company effort. We might be very good on developing technology compared to others, or we might be able to close the loop of bringing value using this technology, because it's not just sequencing the DNA, but also computing the data, but also presenting the data,
Right.
and developing the functional indexes, the recommendation, trying to increase the actionability. And it's a technology that is being used, but other people prefer just to look at this information from a different angle. What we want is that at least we define what should be the minimum, quality or parameters standard that everybody should be using. Otherwise, we'll not be able to compare data.
What you're describing reminds me of this movie, A Brilliant Mind, with Johnny Travolta, that he was able to see the patterns and optimize the crops for his friend, right?
Okay. Hopefully that happens. It's been a long journey, because trusting the technology, we knew it was one of the biggest challenges that we're facing as a startup. And
Right.
still, we work really hard to improve the technology, to showcase, to compare, to share. No, that's also important. Something we did some years ago is starting to build a network of labs. Instead of waiting until others offer like services as the one we do, we open the wet lab workflow to other labs so they can make a fast track to really deliver the services, and also harmonize the methodology, define what are the specific like technical requirements that they can do by themselves, but like being sure that everybody generate data in the same way. And that's something
Right.
that has been, as a company, very successful and give us a reach. Right now, we're operating in 56 different countries, which is great, in different crops. Let's say anyone around the world can access to the big crop technology. So that's something I think is helping us a lot to really set that standard for soil health, understanding soil health as the functional, the biological component of the soil.
Right. Very interesting. Have you seen the interaction of bioactivity within within continents? I mean, I remember reading about these islands that has their own, you know, isolated biosphere, right? Just because they're in an island, right? And how, we have the bees that went from South America to North America. We have the bananas that got affected by it was a plague that affected the bananas many years ago, right? I'm wondering if you see similar patterns like that, and if you're able to see like these isolated places with a very different bioactivity.
It's interesting because when we started, we were we have an idea on how everything was going to work. You're learning and improving in the way and taking decisions. So initially, we're looking at the soil from the taxonomic point of view. So who
Right.
are the species that populates that soil, and what are the proportions? This has been the traditional biodiversity approach. What we realize is that there are huge differences place to place, area to area, continent to continent, crop by crop, because the microbes and their proportions are going to be different. Then there was a bright mind in the team that say, hey, we're looking at this from the wrong side. If we want to really serve agriculture, we have to think about functions. So what it means, imagine we have different cities. We have Rio de Janeiro and San Francisco. So the people living there are completely different. No, in one place people is called Joao, and the other one is John. So different people, different names. But if you think at functional level, in Rio you find police, and police does the same that the police in San Francisco. Bakers, the bakers in Rio bake in the same way bakers in San Francisco bake. Plumbers, accountants. So when you think about functions, a city has certain functions that makes a city, right? Whether it's Rio or San Francisco. If you think about nature, it's pretty much the same. If you compare the rainforest in the Amazonia and the rainforest in Australia, they are completely different. From the taxonomic point of view, the functions, the biological processes happening there, predation, respiration, are pretty much the same. So that was a huge change of how we were serving our clients, and building this system to make a functional, to infer the functional potential of the community of microbes, give us a completely different approach to really, see differences across regions, across crops. Are tomatoes grown in Mexico the same than tomatoes grown in the Netherlands? What are the differences? So from the taxonomic point of view, the soil is going to be different. But from the functional point of view, what we see is that there are some obviously environmental factors, temperature, humidity, so physical parameters impacting soil functions, but farming practices, human intervention is even more important and can balance the functions and even deliver productive systems in the same way.
I see. I see. The difference is, depending on the parameters, you're going to so the processes are the same. You just change the parameters of the process.
And then you can compare, because otherwise it will be very difficult to compare an ecosystem where you have cats as the feline predator, or you have tigers as the feline predator. So it's completely different. But if you think of functions, that function, predation, in the same way. Obviously, the what is the other one? The preys are going to be different too. So the proportion of birds or mice in one ecosystem is going to be different to the proportion of other grass eaters in I don't know. Just making it up. Hopefully the message is clear.
Yeah, what you're saying is it doesn't matter if it's a lion or if a panther, that they're the predators, right? So you focus on the function, and then from the function you focus. You can that way compare apples with bananas, or whatever would be, right? Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Yes. So what do you think has been the hardest moment in building Biome Makers, and how did you get through it?
I would say that growing a team, manage people, is absolutely the most difficult challenge for any entrepreneur as they grow. It's very curious that when we started years ago, we have a mentor, Mustafa Ranagi. He used to be the CTO of Illumina, the largest genetic company in the world, and we were part of the Illumina Accelerator. So we have regular meetings with Mustafa. He was guiding us and advising us, and it was really valuable. And one of the things he said, it was that you're going to grow from 2, by that time it was Alberto and me, to 60. So be prepared for that. And I was like, nah, that's not going to happen. But it happened. It happened. Right now we're 55 people in the team, and building departments, delegating, following up with them. So all human interactions. Also, we work remotely. That's another element that, the people in the well lab, they have to go on site at the place, marketing, finance, sales, software engineers. We work remotely. They love it. But there is some dynamics that are difficult, especially when you grow. So if I have to point out the highest, the biggest challenge that we face is building the team. Right now, I will say I feel that we have the people we need, and they are fully committed, fully engaged, and have all the trust from Alberto and me.
That's amazing. I mean, it's so hard to grow a team and make sure that everybody has a sense of belonging, a purpose that leads towards being committed and own their role. That's very difficult to achieve, but so rewarding on the human level, right? I mean, there's also the business side, right? The business impact, but I mean, I also feel that it's an important way to provide a direct change on the people on your team's life, right? If that makes sense. So I hired many people where they started as trainees and they were able to grow through the organization. They were able to buy a car. They were able to buy a house. They were able to grow a family. And for me, that's very rewarding because it means that what we're doing, it has a direct impact on their well-being, family stability, and yeah, that for me it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and also you have like the double sense. On one hand, you're more relaxed, I might say. I mean, I'm never relaxed at all, but anyway. So having more people delegating, doing the work, you change the responsibilities, right? So you feel a little
Right.
bit more easygoing. You don't have to take care for every individual task that is happening in the company. There are people in charge of them, and they actually take accountability on those tasks. But on the other hand, you have that responsibility because now the life of families depend on the company. So
Yes.
on one hand, you take some pain away, and then on the other hand, you receive some pressure, not even a pain, no, because it's so great and rewarding to know that 50 families, 55 families are getting the food in the table thanks to biomakers, and at the same time they are contributing to achieve the amazing goals that we have as a company because it's so meaningful to be working here. I mean, they could be working in any other company, perhaps earning more money, while our conditions, I would say, are very, very good, but they probably have other opportunities and they choose to be here contributing to the company that we started some years ago and still pushing as hard as possible. So, yeah, it's like good and bad at the same time, but the balance is always good.
Right. Right. Yes, I completely agree. When people decide to join your company, they put their lives in your hands, right? They fully depend on you, and they trust on the success of the company. They trust you, and they trust that you're going to be able to take care of them. Right? And that is a big responsibility that when you have that, it's a very heavy burden and responsibility. But on the other hand, when you see the positive side of positive effects, it's also a blessing, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I I actually I'm finishing my book about this type of dynamics based on my experience of managing software engineering teams across borders, right? It's a particular challenge when you have people from different countries with different cultures and being able to work together remotely as well, right? And I kind of put together all my 20 plus years of experience into the book, and I'm working on the final stages of publishing the book. Yeah. Um, and even though it's about software engineering, I focus a lot on the human aspect, right? So I think that a lot of things that I talk about also applies for other roles, not necessarily technical roles. Right?
Yeah, and I believe that it's so important to share all the learnings that we had under different situations. I have
Right.
received a lot of help, and if we've been able to make this path, is because all the support that we found in the way. Very generous people sharing contacts, ideas, conclusions, looking at your company, assessing, giving you an opinion. So all of that has been extremely useful, and that's the reason because I love whenever somebody call me and say, "You would love to hear from you and your learnings and the difficulties, mainly because there has been so many difficulties in this journey. Building the team, obviously, for me is the greatest. Finding funding resources, especially for a company like ours, has been also another challenge. The multicultural dimension. I mean, being an Spaniard located in California, working globally, then you learn about the different cultures of business in the different geographies, and you realize how different we are. I mean, it's not the same negotiating with Indians. Last year, we signed an agreement for a new lab license, or where we license, as I mentioned before. The way we negotiate that and the way we're now activating is completely different than, for instance, the US business culture or the European business culture. I mean, if we go to Latin America or to Africa, it also changed. So for me, that has been one of the most amazing learnings. Going to Japan or China and learn about how they make business, not because you are, I wouldn't say shy, but kind of analyzing and waiting to understand what's going on. And based on the
Right.
learnings, you react. And then you decide how to play the game, how to negotiate, what to offer, what to say, not to say, if a joke makes sense or not. I try to make a lot of jokes in business meetings just to relax. And, I think play the game in a better way when the atmosphere is not so serious and rigorous. But in some places, that something is needed. It's so interesting. So anyway,
Right. That's frowned upon on some cultures, right? But it's yes, I completely agree. On my book, I talk about that. I call it the Oasis framework, which is basically, you know, yeah, I call it like that. But the idea is, when you come to the to the work area, then we're building a new culture, right? That is different than the Latin America culture. That is different than the American culture. It's a new culture that embodies the best of both, right? And it's about that. It's about adapting, to to figure out a best way to work with American companies that are where the manager is in the US and they have certain expectations, and I have engineers from Latin America with a different style of working, so being able to have that adaptation becomes an important thing, right? And it's what you're talking about. It's a balance of sensitivity, but also remaining oneself, without losing the personality and our own identity, right? But also being able to be effective on the communication, right? It's a delicate balance.
yeah, especially when you're selling or offering something that is new, how you connect
Right,
to people is especially important. From investors to clients, corporates, or all kind of stakeholders, and without that personal connection, probably the your personality, but also your culture helps a lot on building that and being as natural as possible, but at the same time be considered as serious as possible, not unreliable, because at the end of the day, this
right,
is a business transaction.
right, right. Yeah,
And it has
it's
to be fun. That's my way of thinking. We have to have fun doing business, otherwise, where is the fun?
right. Yeah. In Spanish, you know, business is, the negation of fun, right? Negocio is no ocio. Ocio means fun, right? So it's you know the etymology of the word kind of says business is not fun. But I agree with you. I mean, business should be fun, right? We should be able to enjoy it, right?
Yeah, and I would say that has been also part of our success as a company. So
Right,
both Albert and me have enjoyed a lot all the difficulties and all the experiences. Some of them have been very tricky or not as positive if you think from the outside, but from the experience point of view, has been a huge experience. You're saying about the book. I have some friends, they are writers, and they're telling me all the time, hey, all the experiences you are having in the Bay Area, Midwest, well, all the countries we've been, and this cultural business dimension that probably other people have a lot, but live from a different point of view. Thanks to biomakers, we've seen ourselves in places and situations that I thought I will never live, or I was not expecting
Right.
to live, but they came naturally. So I don't know, talking about, for instance, Japan, not be received by authorities in Japan. It's like, last February, we received an award in India, and two ministries of the Indian government were giving us the award, which is like, come on, India is so huge country, so important. So sometimes we also realize that everything we've done is huge, is great, but we try to remain put on the ground and we work with soil. So it has to be put in the ground and
Right.
humble at the same time, because otherwise, yeah, probably you start thinking that you work a lot and you are not able to connect to your clients. That's one philosophy that somehow is in our company DNA, if I'm going to say that in a genetic driven company. But it's real. So building those connections that are personal, close, genuine for us is very important.
Right. Right. Yes, I completely agree. And I love the pun, by the way. Yeah.
It's first time
So
I realized that negocio. Never thought about that. Is the negativity or the negate? I'll say negación of the
yeah,
ocio
the
of the fun,
negation of fun.
negation of
Yeah,
fun.
is no
Wow.
fun. You know,
Thank you for sharing that. I'm going
isn't
to
that
make a
crazy?
lot of jokes with that.
Yeah, I have a 10-year-old and I realize I'm getting more into that jokes. You know, see the silly jokes that it's yeah
That's the best.
that not
So,
even my son laugh anymore, right?
but we do. That's
But but I keep making them, so yeah, I encourage you to use it. Yeah.
good.
So we're running out of time, but I first I want to appreciate you being here today. I truly appreciate it. And second, any final remarks, any final advice for our audience before we wrap it up?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. Thank you. I mean, it's been a lot of fun to do this podcast, but sometimes we do not realize how important our soils are. And this is something that probably not even myself, when we started this journey, we thought that there was a cool business opportunity, but in the moment we start digging literally on the soil, then we realize, hey, careful. For instance, in Europe, we've lost 60% of soil productivity, which is huge. And that means a strategical dependency of food production. If we see the news recently and the agreement between European Commission and Mercosur to ensure the provision of food. Now, some farmers in Europe were not fully happy or happy with this agreement. But if you think about that at the strategic level, it's about soil productivity. So everything goes there to ensure that there is now the concept is full sovereignty. And this is something that all the countries, including the US, is thinking and working and considering seriously. And that's the reason because we're still subsidizing the agricultural activity, because we need not just people in the countryside farming and taking care of the landscape, but also producing food. Because if anything happen in this crazy world, and I know we don't want to go in that direction, but that might happen because humans, we're not as stable as we wish, unluckily, but this is something that we're exposed to. So the message for me is do not underestimate our impact in the soil, because we need the soil. It's the most biodiverse environment, a part of the oceans that we still don't know, but it's hidden in the oceans. But if we don't treat the soil nicely and tools like ours helps a lot to really make this happen, we're going to be suffering, and probably the pessimistic theories on our future will happen. That's the first message that I would like to share beyond the world we're living, because we see a lot of sense on really taking care. of the soil. And for those people who is thinking about building companies, doing something different, be passionate and really enjoy there to do something different. Life might seem long, but it's not so long, and what it has to be is fun. So don't rely on expectations that others are putting on you. Build your own expectations, try something different, and be brave to try. What happened in the way,
Amazing.
it's a learning anyway. So it might be successful or a failure, but what you're going to
Right.
have is a huge experience.
Right. Right. I mean, you're going to learn a lot on the way. So, if that's going to happen, why not try your way, right?
Yeah, I remember when Alberto and me had the conversation, should we go to California? That was a big challenge or decision for
It's a
us,
big
or leaving our
decision.
families behind. By that time, I was living in Denmark, and I was on the gym with the earplugs and talking to Alberto. And actually, I was like, I want to do it. I think it's worth it, but it's on you. And his answer was, if we don't do it, we're going to be regretting this opportunity all the time. So let's do it. And that was like the most convincing statement I had, I would say, till now. If we don't do it, we're going to be regretting. People regret decisions they don't make, not the decisions that they make.
Right. Right. The shoulda, coulda, woulda, right?
What is that?
Should have. So it's should have done it, should or should not have done it, could not do it, would not do it, right? And there is a direct correlation between, you know, people that are like rethinking the decisions they've made. That tends towards unhappiness, misery, and depression, right? Whereas if you're moving forward, right or wrong, making mistakes and learning and improving, then you tend to be happier, right? Where on the other one, you're like regurgitating the bad experiences you had throughout your life, right? And that leads you to a depression, right? It's a never ending, it's a feedback loop that tends to take you to a dark path, right? So I completely agree with you. It's no regrets, just take risks, move forward, and be courageous.
And if another thing is, you don't need to build a company. It's not a path for everyone. So
Right.
sometimes working for others might be as rewarding, and teaming up. So being part of a team is a huge and great experience as well. So not everyone needs to be entrepreneur. I mean, I can tell you by experience that all my white hair in the breast is because of stress and many nights without sleeping. But that was something I feel I have to do. But I see all other colleagues we have at Biome Makers. They are fully committed, they are engaged. They also have their level of stress, but they found a goal by joining this company. I mean, there are others with different goals that might be the suitable one, but don't stay in places where you don't feel you're doing something worth it with your time.
Adrian,
So
truly
philosophical
appreciate it.
at the end. Sorry if that was not the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was amazing. I mean, I I got the feedback that I tend to go too philosophical, but I think it's great. It's a great way to explore and learn about life. So yeah, I think it's great. Yeah. Adrian, thank you very much for being here today. Truly appreciate it.
My pleasure. Call me whenever you need more fun and nice conversation like this.